You're listening to the Nerdverse Adventures podcast. I'm your host, Anton, and on today's episode, Victor joins the show to discuss The Killing Joke by Alan Moore, art by Brian Boland, published March 1988. Yes, a classic in the Batman mythology, in Batman stories. One of the first versions of the story that dug deep into the psyche of who the Joker was, introduced a version of his origin story, and also introduced this idea of an unreliable narrator due to the trauma and past experiences of the villain, and what that meant for a deteriorating psyche, but also someone who does seem like they have control over the situation. It's an incredible story. Please read it before you go into the episode. It is a full spoiler-heavy discussion. We talk about the different elements that stood out to us and why this story resonated with us at the time that we read it. Victor and I have known each other for a long time, since freshman year of high school. And, the timeline is nebulous of when we experience certain things. I think he does mention that he read The Killing Joke a little bit later in life, but I do specifically remember it was sometime either at the end of high school or the very beginning of college that he brought it up, and then I had to search it. I found a copy of it at the library. I read it, and I was blown away with the depth of story, the examination of Batman through the eyes of the Joker, but also what this story represented as far as a point in history. Being in the 1980s, being at a point where society feels like it's eroding, that people are pushing back and yet don't know what that's going to lead into and what Batman represents. This idea that you can push someone to a breaking point, that they can get to the point of who the Joker is, that you can be just an ordinary person trying to make ends meet, and then the psychosis that would happen throughout this story. It's an incredible story. It's rereading it recently for this episode really kind of showed the breadth of what this character, the Joker, represented, and how elements of the story are seen throughout almost every iteration of the Batman since then. Specifically, The Dark Knight plays into a lot of the back and forth of the Joker, as well as some of the elements seen, at least in the trailer, for the upcoming Batman, The Batman, directed by Matt Reeves, portrayed by Robert Pattinson. There are elements of that I can kind of already see playing out. And it's just a really exciting story to revisit at this point in our lives. And I think that's where we kind of ended with this episode. We wanted to see how we reflect on it, how this story has influenced us throughout the course of our lives, from teenagers to college students to being in our mid-20s to now a little bit older. And, what does that reflect as far as the choice that's represented at the end of the story? Because ultimately it's about the Joker pushing someone to the breaking point, trying to prove a point that everyone has the capacity for evil, just like him. But it's the resolve, it's the resilience of the individual to make a choice, even if they're pushed to the brink by one bad day. Coming up, my chat with Victor discussing The Killing Joke. Welcoming to the Nerdverse Adventures, someone who, again, has been part of my past and just my entire history of being a nerd, growing up throughout high school, college, into our adult lives, watching just various things, whether it's comic book movies, the animated movies, or reading comic books one of my first friends to really connect over comic books, the one and only Victor Way. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, Dolfo. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. No, it's exciting times because we do have the Batman with Matt Reeves coming out very soon. So I really want to kind of do almost an extended discussion project with Batman, how that character has grown throughout my lifetime, but also the important people that I figured helped me engage with the stories as I was growing up. So the previous episode had Hung, our very good friend, and now you are here to talk about a very specific story that I feel like has shaped the concept of the Batman through his villain, his most famous villain, the Joker, with the Killing Joke. My question for you, Victor, is what is your origin with Batman and the story of the Killing Joke?
Well, I would say Batman is pretty much, just growing up as a kid, watching like those CW cartoons. I want to say, was it CW back then or whatever those like afternoon cartoons that you either see like Superman, Batman. I'd say the first Batman media was probably Batman the animated series, that cartoon. Uh, Probably watched some of the old Michael Keaton Batmans like when I was like really young, but like I don't really remember it. And I would say like those movies and cartoons were definitely the first uh, experience into Batman. Killing Joke though, I don't think I read Killing Joke until a little bit later. Probably, I don't know if I read it or watched it. To be honest, it's kind of murky now. But I'd say Killing Joke was probably roughly when Dark Knight came out. I remember seeing like a lot of people talked about the Killing Joke used as reference, and I wanted to see what that was about. So read it. Killing Joke's a great story. I'm glad we're talking about it.
Yeah, man. No, I think I distinctly remember you talking about it in college, if not a little bit earlier before then. Of you have to read this if you want like a really deep insight into the Joker. What about that story really clicked for you as far as being a more mature take on Batman, but also an in-depth analysis on who his villains are?
Well, let's see. I mean, the Killing Joke, I'd say the essence of that entire story is basically it talks about how Joker is a normal guy. I think he's like a struggling comedian. He has to do some like crazy job to make ends meet. And I want to say he has one bad day where he fucking loses it and he goes insane, which is pretty much when you think about it, it's like something that you could say what happened to Batman as well, right? You can say Batman had one terrible day, saw his parents die, murdered in front of him, and you could say he went insane too. I mean, the dude dresses up as a bat, fighting crime, no superpowers, whatnot, and just whoops ass. But I mean, Batman took one road, and Joker also just they're both doing their own thing, like going that insane route. But one has this idea of being good, and with his only rule of not killing anyone, whereas Joker kind of I don't know. He just went completely insane.
Yeah, it's this idea of like rich complexities behind characters that we grow up with, right? So I think, like you mentioned, we started by watching the animated series, very much tailored for children, based off a lot of the comic books that came out around that time, but definitely animated with some fun. But also, if you're an adult watching it, you see the darker themes and darker complexities, but they're not as front and center as something like The Killing Joke, which is interesting because Killing Joke came out in 1988. So it was kind of the start of the more dark tones, kind of shifting towards those types of stories. But us as kids who just didn't have access to comic books didn't know about it. So we didn't really have access to it until it kind of phased out of pop culture and media. To kind of shift into the other characters. So it is very much grounded in the kind of the conflict between a lot of the different characters in the story. So we do have Batman and the Joker as your main focal points, but you do also have Barbara Gordon, Batgirl, and James Gordon, who is Commissioner Gordon at the time. At the not very beginning, but fairly early on in the story, it hits you with a very dark almost disturbing tragedy of the Joker coming to the home of the Gordons and shooting Barbara Gordon, paralyzing her. When you read that, kind of, still kind of molding your thoughts about comic book heroes and superheroes stories, what did that do for your psyche when you saw that panel, that moment, and that experience of a comic book twisting in that way?
That panel was just straight brutal. Because, I mean, you have Batgirl, who you see as a heroine. Nothing bad can fall upon her. And within like two panels, she gets shot, and it kind of just sets the tone of the overall comic of this is the route we're going to take. But yeah, no, something I wanted to circle back. I mean, we were talking about just how the Killing Joke had a much more darker sense of storytelling. I mean, growing up, even those old Batmans, I want to say, what was the first recorded Batman? I want to say the like na 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 na.
Right.
No, it was still like a joke. Everything was like kind of lighthearted and fun, but it really was like Killing Joke that really like said, like, yo, this is like grim undertones, like just brutalness. Yeah.
Yeah, the Batman of the 60s was definitely of the Silver Age, Golden Age era of kind of cheesy pop art Batman, right? And comic books in general, right? Where those characters were more of a cultural touch point for everyone to access, as opposed to exploring the darker and richer themes and storytelling of a reflection of society, right? Which I do feel like this Alan Moore story has shifted into, especially in the late 80s, when there was just a lot of social upheaval, a lot of uncertainty. We didn't live through it, but a lot of the history books would like to tell us and remind us that Reaganomics did not particularly work for a lot of people, and this was kind of the reflection that he was trying to, or at least Alan Moore was trying to depict within how society responds back to things that are very depressing or a depressant on society in and of itself. Let's just jump into a couple themes of the Killing Joke that I feel like have resonated over time. And it's one that you touched on briefly to kind of start, which is important because it's one of the themes that sticks with readers. I think universally has stuck with readers every time a new person has read it, whether they've been primed for it or whether it's something they've taken away naturally. Is this idea of one bad day, kind of wrapped up in a more general theme of insanity. So what is the line? What is the delineating line between Batman's experience with one bad day and the Joker's experience with one bad day, from what you know from past Batman stories and specifically here with the Killing Joke and his origin?
Well, I mean, with Batman, his one bad day is basically he sees like this evil in front of him and he tries to rectify it. He tries to become that force of good to make sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Whereas I'd say Joker, his bad day, he wants people to kind of like see the joke in that, like, this can happen to anybody, which I think is basically kind of like I think probably why he loves Batman so much as well, right? It's like, how do you not understand this joke that's so obvious to me and probably so obvious to most other people? That's what he does to his victims. But I mean, I think that it's a great theme that I think anyone can really relate to.
Yeah, no, it is that line, right, where depending on your status in life, where you are placed in life, I think a lot of those factors have everything to do with your choice at the very end of the day, right? I think what separates the Joker and the Batman is that they are making an active choice to follow the path that they're on, regardless of that instance in their life. They do have that shared experience in the sense that Batman saw his parents murdered in front of him. His parents to him were people that were protecting the city. And what did the city do to him? It took away the people that he loved the most. The Joker, he just wanted to be a normal person. He just wanted to take care of his wife, his pregnant wife, trying to find the best way possible. You know, unfortunately, it had to be through a mob job, and then the coincidence of events that led to the fact that his wife was murdered on the night of the job, leading him into that, was just a culmination of everything that could happen to a person to make them kind of flip into that kind of mindset. I do want to shift into Commissioner Gordon a little bit with this theme. So the crux of what the Joker wants to accomplish is to show Batman that it does only take one bad day to break someone. So it does start off with the Joker coming to the house and shooting Barbara Gordon, very tragic, and then furthering by taking Commissioner Gordon to the abandoned circus, the abandoned carnival, and ties him up, removes all his clothes, puts him in a fun house, and then shows him pictures of his brutalized, naked, paralyzed daughter in hopes to break him, in hopes to destroy his morality, to break his spirit. When you read that and kind of seeing how the art played together with these images of just very disturbing moments, how did that hit you? And kind of how does that play for you now, kind of reflecting back on that?
Reading it at the time was absolutely bonkers, right? It's like, yo, like, how fucked up is Joker to do this to any person? Like, if reading it, you'll probably think like, yo, any sane man, like, if they got free, they would beat the shit. They would kill Joker, like, straight up. Which kind of is like what it goes down to the end, where does Gordon break or not? But seeing that, and I would say my perspective probably, it probably changes by the day or on my mood, right? Because like, I think you can sympathize with either side. Like, dude, if someone breaks because of that, I mean, like, how could you not? Really, but to stay strong and stay true to yourself, even with all that going on, takes like a certain type of strength, certain type of inner strength to like really persevere through that type of trauma.
Right. And then I think that that's the perfect word to kind of encapsulate the experience of Jim Gordon, right? Because it's the Joker showing Commissioner Gordon how society is corroding around him, how his city that he's protecting, Gotham City, has let him down essentially. But like you said, it's perseverance, it's the inner strength that you have to rise above all of those pressures, all of those things that can go wrong in order to retain your own humanity and who you are as a person. And it does lead us very seamlessly into the next theme I want to touch on. And this idea of shared trauma and pain, right? So specifically in this story, we do have the mirroring of Batman and the Joker's trauma and pain in their history. We all know the origin story of Batman. His parents were shot in front of him. And now we're kind of given this origin story of the Joker, that he just wanted to make ends meet for his pregnant wife. Wanted to do the best while also trying to do what he loved in life. It's going to be a comedian telling jokes, but sometimes life doesn't work out that way. What's most troubling, again, is just the compounding of the fact that his wife is murdered on the night and the nebulous nature of what's actually happening to him, how he's breaking as a person. So my question for you is, what is it about the Joker and the Batman that separates them for this point of trauma, in your opinion, that had the Joker going one way and the Batman going another?
And I don't know if I could say if it's any one thing, but I mean, just where they are in life definitely makes a difference, right? You have Batman, who, yes, his parents are murdered, very traumatizing, but I mean, he comes off from a well-off family. He's still a billionaire, like, when all is said and done. Yeah, it probably doesn't like erase the trauma of losing your parents in front of you, but like, you still have so much in life going for you, while Joker is like complete opposite, right? You have someone struggling to pay probably basic bills, living in a shitty ass apartment. You really just don't have anything in life. You're probably just desperate, grabbing at straws for any type of validation or or anything. And it's a little bit easier to see how one can still find the good in life when you're like still in a well-off position like Bruce was compared to Joker.
Yeah, no, and that does draw a really nice parallel to a modern Joker story that we've all experienced fairly recently, and that's Todd Phillips' Joker of 2019, portrayed by Joaquin Phoenix, Oscar winner Joaquin Phoenix, excellent movie. And they really do show the flip side of everything, right? Because for the most part, we've been conditioned to think that Batman, he's this troubled hero, but we should be reminded occasionally that he is a billionaire. Where we're now on screen in the movies are seeing this depiction of someone who is not well off, who does not have the resources, who has mental health issues. So in addition to not being able to support himself financially, but now is shelved and pushed aside by society because of the way they see those with mental health disorders. What's your take on that movie? And how do you feel like that movie draws a line between what we know of the Joker and the Killing Joke and how Joaquin Phoenix portrayed him in Joker?
Sorry, what was the first part of the question?
No worries. What's your take on the movie? How do you feel like the movie Joker and the Killing Joke? What are the parallels you see between those two stories?
Oh yeah. First of all, I love the movie. I thought Joaquin Phoenix did an excellent job. Just showing just like all the different faces of the Joker, right? You see him as starting off before he kind of like breaks down. And then you can just see him as he is like just tired with society and how society treats people like him, that like it just isn't fair. And he just completely breaks. He sees the joke in society as the Joker, obviously, and just fucking loses it. I mean, that's very similar to, I'd say, the Killing Joke. I would say the Joker movie was heavily inspired by the Killing Jokes of one bad day or just accumulation of just when your life is not going well and people break. I mean, it happens. Yeah.
So with all that being said, and we like to take fantasy and fiction as analogs for our own lives and our own experiences. I personally hope that we never have to experience anything as extreme or traumatizing. But what's your point of view on this type of empathy that you share for a character like the Joker? In your personal experience, how have you had moments in your life where you reflected and said, yeah, I can totally understand how someone would go to a life of crime, or even perhaps commit murder for the sake of these accumulated traumas, like you mentioned? Are there experiences in your life that you can reflect on that are similar?
Oh man, putting me on the spot right here. I wouldn't say that I've broken down into thinking like, yo, the world is unfair, I'm gonna go on a killing spree, or just like nothing matters anymore. But I mean, it wouldn't go like to that sort of level. I mean, like seeing that on screen and just like trying to understand a character definitely gives you the empathy of probably understanding someone else like on the street that you don't talk to or whatnot. Like you don't know what's going on with their story. I mean, I don't want it sounds, I don't know if we're allowed to say it, but it makes crazy seem more relatable, right? Everyone's going through their own shit, and you just don't know what might be the trigger that finally breaks them.
No, that's excellent. It's perfect, because it kind of leads me into this idea of strength and morality, right? Where, and this is something that was a main point of The Dark Knight, that the Joker wanted to show Batman that people will make choices towards chaos. But ultimately, at the very end, when he gives the people of Gotham the choice between the two votes, the people are inherently good. And Batman is there to kind of be that symbol, the symbol of hope, symbol of morality, symbol of strength. And within the story of the Killing Joke, that is what's happening in parallel with all of the very disturbing images that we're seeing and experiencing within the story, where the Joker is playing that song where he talks about crumbling societies and how can you be a good person in a time where there's so much war. We're on the brink of World War III numerous times. Well, at the very end, Jim Gordon leaves the tunnel in a cage, so you do feel like he's broken a little bit, but Batman comes and says, I'm good. Get him, but get him the right way. What is your what are your thoughts on how that story played out, where it could have very easily been a situation where Jim Gordon is broken, he is a man crying in the rain, but he sees the strength of collective humanity, that he still needs to uphold justice in that sense. What I know, how did that hit you when you kind of realize, oh, Jim Gordon is good? Like he still wants to do the right thing, as opposed to what the Joker was aiming to have him break towards.
I mean, first of all, I was happy that Gordon made it out. I wouldn't say okay, but still intact with his like core beliefs, because it's much stronger than I'd say most people, right? Most people would not come out of that all right at all. I mean, to be brutalized, stripped naked, see your own daughter naked, shot, paralyzed, that's I doubt many people could handle that. And I mean, it really just speaks to the type of character that Jim Gordon is, to have that kind of strength to really believe in doing things by the book, which tells you why he is the perfect Gotham police commissioner. Like no one else probably deserves the job more than him. Because how else could you stay sane in probably the most insane city within like the comic book sphere? Like I don't think any place is as crazy as Gotham. The villains produced in the Batman series are some of the most like nutcase whack job characters ever.
Very, very extreme. Very, very much on, very much like exploring the different elements of the psyche and kind of the breaking points of the psyche in different ways, right? And I do think the Joker here specifically is trying to push people towards chaos. It's trying to push people towards questioning their inner morality, and how do you force people to think, as one of the themes of the book, how to be insane, how to lose their sanity, right? And I do think at the very end, it does put you in a place where you do think Batman is a strong pillar of hope and strength, right? But it gets to this point where, you lead it into the iconic moment where the Joker has not won. The Batman has got him out in the rain, and the Joker is telling a joke. The joke goes, paraphrasing, it's quite long, so I read it recently, but essentially that these two inmates were trying to escape the asylum. One of them jumps the gap, the other one does not want to, but then the one says, shine your flashlight across the gap so I can make a light bridge and you can cross it. And the other one says, are you insane? I would never do that because you'll turn it off and I would fall to my death. And it's this whole idea that the Joker represents something very specific. And it's this idea of a joke. And what are jokes? They are chaos. They are illogical. They don't make sense oftentimes. But there is something funny between the lines of what it is, because it is a surprise. To you, how does the Joker represent the joke within his message of questioning society, using Batman as the opposite end of that? I guess another
Did you
way.
say Batman is the person in the joke who would shine the light, or are they both? Because I've read the joke before, and I'm not gonna lie, definitely the first time I read it, it just blew past my head, and because like it's something that you touched on, right? Like the joke doesn't completely make sense. There's no like obvious punchline, but that's kind of what jokes are, right? They're nonsensical at times. Surprise, which kind of explains or gives you an insight to Joker's psyche, like how he thinks. Um, but I mean, it's definitely a very what's it called? It's a very I don't want to say a questionable joke, but it's a joke where like you're not really sure what's going on.
Yeah, it's intentionally ambiguous, right? Where it's supposed to be a joke because he tells you it's a joke, but then it's not very funny. But I also feel like that kind of falls into the point of what was set up prior to that in the prior scenes. So it's this whole back and forth between the Joker and the Batman saying, you should let people fall and break, is what the Joker is trying to push Batman towards. And Batman says, it's not funny. I've heard this joke before, saying that evil is cyclical in nature, right? There will always be evil coming up. It's how do you respond to that evil? And I feel like that's all wrapped up and tied together at the very end, where you don't know actually the ending of the story. So my question to you, Victor.
Oh, I know this one.
Does Batman kill the Joker?
So I'm inclined to say no, because with the all the themes that are presented in Killing Joke, right? You have Gordon who doesn't break despite everything. And you kind of want your hero as well to be also that infallible character of like he will not go against his own code, which let's be real. The code of not killing people just doesn't make sense. All right. Because I mean Batman has definitely put people in the ER, probably like drinking through a straw or eating through a straw. I mean like this whole like it's okay to like beat them within an inch of their life, but not kill them just is completely it doesn't make sense. But as to whether he kills, I want to say no, because come on, it's Batman, right? Batman, he may be the Dark Knight, but I mean he still does what's right. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a very logical question for Batman, right? It's this whole idea where we know him as the vigilante Caped Crusader who fights crime, literally punching people through walls and throwing people off buildings like he does in The Dark Knight with I think it's Salvador Maroni that he drops. I'm pretty sure it's Maroni. It's not Falcone. But if I'm wrong, I apologize to the audience. But he throws him off a 2-story building. He breaks his legs. That's pretty horrifying.
Yes.
Like I cannot imagine falling that far with nothing to brace myself and just like the pain searing through my entire body. So in that sense, it is kind of funny that he draws the line of murder. But I think if we're looking at this from a fictional fantasy heroic storytelling perspective, that he is this myth, right? He is this mystery that if the legend of the Batman is that he is here for justice, but he will not take a life, then that is the story that he wants to perpetuate that makes him different from all the villains that he's pursuing, right? So whether you are a big crime boss or you're the Joker or the Riddler or the Scarecrow or just someone on the street, that is what separates him as a hero. And for me, I think it's ambiguous on purpose. I think it's open to interpretation for the reader. And I'm going to, well, I have both sides of it. So the side of it that would say that Batman kills the Joker, I feel like I respect that point of view, because it's this idea that the Batman also represents vengeance, right? Where he wants to avenge what is happening to his city, what has happened to his parents, to all the bad that has happened around him. And depending on who you are as a person, depending on where you are in life and what has happened to you, maybe that is what you need to kind of survive and to continue to do the right thing. But at a certain point, doing the right thing to that extent comes at a cost. And I feel like that's kind of the lesson of the story, is that if you interpret the end of the story as the Batman killing the Joker, then the Joker has won. Which that's your opinion of what you feel like society is going to be. Not necessarily where it is presently, but it's this idea of the society is continuously corroding to a point to the end, right? It may not be today, May not be tomorrow, but it's eventually going to get there. But I do think, but I don't completely agree with that, right? I don't think that Batman does kill him. So I do want to flip it back to the other side and say, me personally, I don't think Batman kills the Joker. I think he lets him live. I think it's played ambiguously for the art of everything, whether it's the smirk on Batman's mouth and the way that he reaches out forward and kind of makes you think he's.
There's also like a sound effect in one of those panels, right? It kind of looks like a bone crack, or you can't really tell what it is. But
yeah.
I mean, it's definitely heavily implied,
Yeah.
but you don't get to see it. So
yeah. And it's amazing because so the version of the Killing Joke I have behind me has notes from the creators. The artist, his name is Brian Boland. He talks about it at the very end, and he says, "I will answer if Batman kills the Joker." After, and then he talks about like some other stuff, and at the very end, he leaves it as an ellipsis because ultimately, I feel like that is the Killing Joke, right? What is a joke? It's chaos. It's question. It's not completely understanding. It's illogical, nonsensical, like you said. And everything in those last few pages is complete nonsensical, from what we know of the Batman, where he stands morally, where he stands with justice, to how he's drawn, how he's depicted, and then what we're ultimately led to believe him doing or not doing, right? I personally don't think he kills the Joker. I think it's there to be played as a joke, because that is the ultimate, I guess, objective of the story, right?
So it was a joke on the readers all along.
Right? Yeah, which I think makes it an incredibly complete, masterful story, right? Where you are not supposed to take everything literally, but the themes, the heavy things about what you're supposed to be as a person, how you take that into society, are what's most important, right? But then it brings you back to this reality that this is a comic book. We're supposed to have fun with things. We're supposed to enjoy it as art. And I think it all ties together really well at the very end. Yeah.
Let me just also say that you brought this up. If Joker kills the Batman, Joker has won. I would say across like a lot of media, like I feel like that has been Joker's point, like his like what he wants at the very end, right? He wants Batman to kill him. I think there's the Injustice comic book series, or I guess video games, where I want to say he does something really fucked up to Lois Lane, and then Superman kills him, and you can just see on his face like, aha, I got you, I won with my death by breaking this symbol of light,
breaking
right?
the Man of Steel. Yes.
Breaking the Man of Steel, but with your fist through me, like that's ultimately what Joker wants. And I mean, it's hard to beat that, you know, if you're a good person and you truly believe that.
And I always
sorry. I was gonna say Injustice, it just also shows you that one bad day, right? You have Superman going crazy from one bad day. I mean, he does some like horrible shit, but I mean, under the influence of Joker, and then you see what he becomes, dude. He becomes a straight up like Nazi ruler type shit.
Yeah, no, Injustice is a fantastic story. I love the comics that were a tie-in to the video game. The video game itself is like Mortal Kombat, so if you love that fighting style, it's kind of amazing. And there's a story too, if you just play it through.
The story.
Yeah, it's kind of an incredible story for essentially a Mortal Kombat fighting game style. Yeah, check it out if you haven't. But yeah, it does go a long way as to like continuing the legacy of the Joker, right? It's this idea that we as people, me personally, I think we're inherently good. I think we inherently want the betterment of humanity, the betterment of people around us. We want to see the good in people. But I do feel like evil, again, is cyclical. Evil will always rear its ugly head to challenge us, to put us in situations where we question ourselves, right? We question our own morality. Because it's not the Joker that we question. We understand the Joker is specifically this very evil agent of chaos, anarchist. But it's how people respond to him. It's how the audience responds to him that then puts into question, puts a magnifying glass on those elements of society that we're trying to push back against. And for all of that to be kind of the foundational pieces of Batman from 1988 to everything that we've experienced throughout our childhood, playing video games, into the Dark Knight, into this new iteration of the Batman coming up, I think is a brilliant achievement that Alan Moore and Brian Boland have accomplished. Yeah, and I do hope that people will go back and read this comic book, because sometimes I feel like this is a crotchety old man on the porch saying get off my lawn, but these kids don't read. And if these kids found these comic books, oh man, their world will just be expanded, right?
If people read this, they would understand how many themes of like current media Batman all draw upon this story.
Yeah. Yeah, and then even further, just like what darker stories have used as inspiration moving forward, because there are a lot of parallels between Moon Knight and Batman. Moon Knight is a little bit more on the fantastical side, but he's still a caped crusader in the night who has a moral conundrum to deal with, right? And I feel like people who love Marvel movies, Marvel TV shows, perhaps maybe didn't read Moon Knight, but Batman, and the metaphors and the parallels between both those characters. You read The Killing Joke, you would kind of also see the psyche and the trauma that the character Moon Knight will go through in the TV show.
Can't wait for that.
Yeah, man. We're getting on a Marvel tangent, which is great. Love everything. Honestly, we're in the golden age. Or are we in the silver age now of comic book movies and TV shows?
I don't know, but all I know is growing up, there's no way I would have believed like this type of media would be mainstream. Like Marvel, DC, just like shows. Disney Plus putting out like quality hit TV series or TV miniseries over and over for like each individual character. It's just wow. There's no way I would have believed this growing up.
Yeah, it's one of those where, like you said, no way that we would have ever believed it would happen, but also with the consistency and the availability. Like we literally have it every month. Something new. Yeah. It's like, what is happening?
Quality too. I mean,
yeah,
they are home runs each time.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, and you get them from all genres and all types of stories. I mean, we just finished the Book of Boba Fett. If you ever played with toys in a sandbox, that finale was that. And we're going right into Moon Knight. Peacemaker just finished. If you haven't watched that, I still haven't, but I did watch The Suicide Squad, and I'm ready to binge Peacemaker. And
Peacemaker's good. I would suggest that you take a look at it.
Yeah,
I mean, Peacemaker also has some lines about Batman as well that I think you might like.
Gosh, okay, I will get on that.
Too much here, but.
No, man. Like, well, I can ask you, like, what are your overall thoughts about Peacemaker? How essentially it's this idea of soft reintroducing the general audience to the DC universe, characters, villains, anti-heroes, but in a very different way than superheroes have been represented in the past. What are your just feelings about Peacemaker?
I mean, I actually didn't really know who Peacemaker was before. So after watching the TV show, getting to know a little about his backstory, who his father was, how his experiences shaped him, was definitely a treat to watch. I mean, it kind of just shows, if anything, it shows like if you have some incredible trauma in your life, you might become either a superhero or supervillain.
Nice, yeah.
But no, so well, I'll just say it because there's just one scene where Peacemaker's talking about Batman, and he's just saying like Batman's an asshole because he has his fucking moral code of never killing anyone, right? Like, how many people do you think he's indirectly not killed, or how many people do you think he's indirectly killed because he wouldn't kill, say, Joker? Yeah. If the first time he took down Joker, killed him, like you would have saved thousands of deaths based on like what the Joker does afterwards. And it's just this theme of, or it's not this thing, but it's what we were talking about. Like you have Batman's broken moral code that I guess is what kind of in his mind differentiates him from being a villain. But really, like, are you saving that many people in the end?
It's a moral paradox, right? It's, do you trade
Yeah.
lives? Which I think it's fascinating. I don't think there's a specific answer if you're looking at it from a modern mythology point of view, but if you're looking at it from like a practical point of view, which Peacemaker is very much grounded in reality in a lot of ways, I think it's a really interesting point as well as a funny point, because I know that show has a lot of comedy in there, a lot of comedy that I don't think we've seen executed this way in comic book movies or shows ever. So I'm just very excited for James Gunn to do everything in DC. If they want to give him all the money, please do. Yeah.
Yeah, man. If you love watching media with like old 70s, 80s soundtracks, James Gunn is your man.
That's amazing. Gosh. All right. Let's move into closing thoughts. Victor. So, you and I have been longtime friends. We've grown up with comic books in our lives, Batman in our lives, Joker in our lives. How has The Killing Joke and Batman and Joker changed for you over time? And where do you sit today with these symbols of good and evil and kind of a moral conflict that we kind of have to deal with every day in our lives? Not necessarily maybe to this degree, but kind of the questions that we ask ourselves to help get us through. Where do you sit with this today?
I mean, I think it's just a good story just to kind of keep you grounded, really. To show a little more empathy in life, right? Like, oh shit, my bad. And you can, I mean, Killing Joke, I haven't really rewatched it in my past few years. I did like a quick Wikipedia, I think a week ago when we first broached the subject. But I think before I kind of had that feeling when I first watched or read it, like this kind of shock of like, holy shit, like this is some like dark ass stuff that I'm reading versus I think like if I was reading like Marvel stuff, it's just kind of like bang bang boom boom pew, pew, like just cool comic book stuff, right? Like shooting lasers and whatnot. But this definitely showed like how gritty and like the human experience can be, and what kind of results from it. How I view it now, probably not too different. It's just kind of more just reminding me like, yo, anyone can have a bad day, and you should try to. I'd like to say that I try to see the good. Like I definitely see Jim Gordon's character of trying to stay strong through hard times, through adversity. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great kind of lesson to kind of hold with anyone's journey in life, right? Because I think we're all going to have different challenges, and we're all going to be faced with various choices that can wane in morality between either doing the right thing that may be difficult, what is inherently good, or the wrong thing that might potentially be easier. Again, kind of alluding to the Joker taking on the Red Hood moniker just for the night because he needed money, and he still had to do it because he was stuck, and that escalated into a cascade of events that led him into the person that he was at the end with the Joker. For me, it really taught me this idea that comic books are far more complex than just the fun, colorful things that we grew up reading. But I also feel like it made me reassess the reasons why I loved the things that I did before in a whole different light, and why that was so appealing to begin with. Because I think as a kid, you watch the animated series and you're like, oh, this is amazing, this is great. It's fun. It's Batman and Robin. We see them driving in the Batmobile, and then all the different villains and characters that we experienced and want all the toys for, right? But watching them as an adult and realizing how much depth was actually built into those stories, it's kind of remarkable that I feel like a lot of those things were subconsciously seeped into who we are as people, kind of forming and shaping who we are and kind of foundationally what it means to be a good person. And I feel like you and I, you definitely have a lot of that grounding of what it means to have empathy for people who have less, who you feel like you should be heroic towards. And in a really cheesy way, I feel like you're a hero to me, Victor. You're a hero to me,
Bro,
man.
no. We all heroes together.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what kind of separates the good and the bad, the heroes and villains, and these points, these inflection points in these stories, right? Is that how do we inherently attach or connect with the perspectives given? And if not to say that if you relate with the Joker, you're a bad person, but if you relate with the Batman, even with all his flaws, even with him putting people in the hospital, not being able to move again, maybe not killing them, but putting in the hospital, that you can still understand, then I feel like that does speak volumes to kind of who you are as a person. So, yeah, man, I think you are a good reflection of that with Batman. My final question to you is, with The Killing Joke, what is a moment of fun? If you can remember any moment of fun in The Killing Joke, and what is your one selling point to someone who has never read The Killing Joke or a comic book in their life?
Something fun. I don't think there's any fun panel in there. I'd say the most fun panel is at the end when they're laughing together. And you're like, okay, and then the next panel you're like, but what? Yeah. I would not say there's a. I mean, I haven't seen it or read it in a while, but no, I don't remember any fun panel. But how I would sell this, I mean, this is for someone who isn't even into comic books. I would say this would be a great story into like both human psyche, or you could even say like how it relates to mental illness, and just having it talk about the themes of like life, of making hard choices, dealing with your consequences, and how that affects you. I mean, I think for a first time reader, it might be a little bit hard because it kind of bounces around in time. So it could be a little bit hard to understand at first, but this is just a great story. Forget that it's using Batman characters, but it's just a great story.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it myself. I don't think there is a fun moment in that entire comic book.
I don't think there is. I like tried thinking of it, but I was like, yo, it starts off so brutal, and then you start seeing like Joker's life, which is like pathetic, right?
Yeah.
He's struggling, then
I think the closest thing I can think of is when Batman is kind of fooled at the beginning, because he is at Arkham, he is trying to interview the Joker, and he finds out that it's an imposter. He's escaped again.
Yeah.
But then visually, the person that's taken his place is also very, very intense. So it gives you this sense of urgency. It's like, oh, this is a serious story. So I think maybe some of the jokes, if you take them out of context throughout the story, I think they can be kind of funny. The Joker, spreads throughout the story, but I think within also context, it makes it very difficult to think of them as just jokes because they do have double meanings in a lot of cases. I think your selling point is excellent. I think if you have never read a comic book before and if you want one concise story of who the Batman and the Joker is, this is where you start. It's not very long. If I'm really giving another selling point, you could finish this at Starbucks on a busy day when the Starbucks line is long and you just need a drink and you want to wait in line. You could probably finish it in that time because it's not very long. All right. Well, Victor, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much, sir, for joining the show, for sticking by me and talking some Batman, talking some Joker, and the Killing Joke. This is fun. Let's do it again.
Dude, thank you for having me on the show, man. I had a great time. Dude, there are a whole bunch of other nerdverse topics we could talk about later. So yeah, I'd be excited to come on again. Thank you.
Yeah, man. If I can binge Peacemaker real quick, and then I'll write some stuff up. We'll get you back on. We'll talk about Peacemaker. That sounds like a good one.
For sure, dude. I've been watching a whole bunch of any. First of all, any Disney Plus show that comes out, for sure, I will get on that. Is Kenobi the next one?
It's the next Star Wars. It's May 25th.
Oh, May 25th. Why didn't they do May 5th or May 4th?
Yeah. It's Star Wars. Jeez, we go off another like 10 hours on Star Wars. But yeah, we'll get you back on. We'll plan something. But let's sign out. So thank you everyone for listening to the Nerdverse Adventures. Follow on Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts, and find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at the Nerdverse Adventures. For Victor, this is Anton, and this has been the Nerdverse Adventures.
Nerdverse Adventures!